What started out as a non-violent protest against authoritarian government turned into one of the bloodiest and most complicated wars in contemporary history. The war in Syria? With no obvious end in sight, it has attracted several factions and other forces throughout the years. Syria has become a theater of operations for broader geopolitical objectives because to the involvement of regional players like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey, as well as global powers like the US and Russia. The war became more complex due to the formation of ISIS, which attracted worldwide attention and military action. With millions of people displaced, a broken economy, and continuous humanitarian problems, Syria is still a fractured country today. Even though the Assad regime has won military battles, peace and stability are still unattainable. Syria's future is uncertain because foreign efforts to mediate a political solution have mainly stagnated. Beyond its boundaries, the war's effects are felt in regional stability, global geopolitics, and the lives of millions of people. Even though the fighting has become less intense, years will be needed for the deep wounds caused by the war to heal. The ongoing struggle for peace in the Middle East, the human cost of war, and the complexity of contemporary geopolitics are all starkly brought to light by the Syrian crisis. 1. The Arab Spring and domestic grievances, the origins of the conflict. The Arab Spring of 2011, which saw a wave of pro-democracy uprisings throughout the Middle East and North Africa, is credited with starting the Syrian Civil War. Public dissatisfaction in Syria was stoked by long-standing grievances against President Bashar al-Assad's administration, which included authoritarianism, economic disparity, corruption, and brutality. Peaceful demonstrations in the southern city of Daraa began in March 2011 in response to calls for political reforms and the release of political detainees. Tensions, however, increased as a result of the regime's ruthless suppression of these protests. Assad's harsh approach fueled the protests, rather than putting an end to the discontent, which resulted in widespread instability throughout the nation. Protesters' demands evolved as the revolution gained momentum, moving from reform to Assad's complete departure. What started out as a non-violent rebellion against an oppressive government swiftly descended into a bloody civil war that involved numerous local and foreign players and laid the groundwork for one of the most disastrous wars of the 21st century. 2. The Assad regime's reaction and militarization of the conflict. The situation swiftly spiraled out of control into a fully fledged civil war as a result of the Assad regime's severe crackdown on nonviolent protests. Lethal force was used by security personnel to retaliate, shooting defenseless bystanders and making thousands of arrests. By the middle of 2011, rebel factions, including former members of Assad's military, had started arming themselves and establishing the Free Syrian Army (FSA). This was the turning point in the conflict's militarization, as armed revolt replaced the initial civic protest movement. Assad was adamant about holding on to power and had the backing of important allies like Iran and Russia. The battle became increasingly complicated and multidimensional as the violence increased, enlisting the help of other factions and foreign powers. The result was a destabilized and devastated Syria. 3rd, a rise in sectarian splits and acts of war through proxy. Sectarian divides played a major role in the conflict's intensification, and Syria's diverse population became a contributing factor. For many years, the Assad family, who belonged to the Alawite minority, a branch of Shia Islam, reigned over a populace that was primarily Sunni Muslim. Long-standing sectarian tensions between Sunnis and Shias were heightened when civil war broke out, providing a battlefield for regional power struggles. Hezbollah, a Lebanese group, and Iran, a country with a Shia majority, backed Assad, while Sunni-dominated nations like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar backed the opposition forces. Due to these interventions, the Syrian Civil War has evolved into a proxy war between foreign nations vying for influence in the area. The ascent of ISIS and radical elements. Extremist groups flourished as a result of the Syrian Civil War in 2013. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria ISIS became a powerful force. ISIS captured significant territory in eastern Syria and western Iraq by taking advantage of the instability and power vacuum left by the disintegrating Syrian state and the weaker opposition. ISIS, which was once an al-Qaeda offshoot, declared a caliphate in 2014 and established a violent, hardline Islamist government that included terror attacks and public executions. Their violent methods and quick territorial gains complicated the already complex civil war by drawing focus away from it and onto counterterrorism initiatives. Fifth international intervention: US, Russia, and Iran. International powers soon turned the Syrian conflict into a battlefield, with several nations interfering to further their own agendas. Russia, Assad's principal supporter, intervened militarily in 2015 and carried out airstrikes that considerably strengthened the regime's position. This intervention proved to be pivotal, offering both military might and diplomatic backing. Iran also had a significant impact, sending Hezbollah militants to support Assad and providing military support through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC). In the meantime, the US spearheaded a coalition whose main objective was to destroy ISIS, while also providing some support to rebel organizations opposed to Assad. This intricate network of foreign meddling not only made the fight last longer, but it also made the struggle for dominance in the area more fierce. 6. Humanitarian disaster and migration of refugees. With more than half of the 22 million people who lived there before the war being displaced, the Syrian conflict has caused one of the worst humanitarian disasters in contemporary history. A large number of people have sought safety in Europe, while millions more have fled to nearby nations like Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Over 500,000 people have died, thousands of them innocent bystanders. Devastating strategies including chemical weapons, barrel bombs, and unrelenting sieges have been used by Assad's forces. 7. The Kurds' role in the struggle for autonomy. An ethnic minority in Syria, the Kurds have been vital to the war effort, especially in the struggle against ISIS. With support from the United States, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces (SDF) were able to drive ISIS out of a sizable portion of northeastern Syria. The Kurds created Rojava, a semi-autonomous territory in these territories, advocating for decentralized governance founded on democratic values and gender equality. But Turkey, which sees the SDF as a continuation of the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK), a Kurdish separatist organization Ankara considers to be a terrorist organization, has opposed the Kurds' demands for autonomy. 8. State of affairs and continued difficulties. Even though the war's ferocity has decreased from its peak, Syria is still an unpredictable and split nation. The majority of the country is once again under Assad's authority, but opposition-held areas, especially in the northwest Idlib, continue to exist. The reconstruction effort in Syria is becalmed, with little funding and a severely damaged economy. Even though the fighting has become less intense, years will be needed for the deep wounds caused by the war to heal. The ongoing struggle for peace in the Middle East, the human cost of war, and the complexity of contemporary geopolitics are all starkly brought to light by the Syrian crisis. Let us know in the comments what you think about the war in Syria, explained in 8 minutes, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more captivating content on our YouTube channel.